Hi, my name is going under the name Skipper for this particular video. Um, so this is an actualizing with Skipper video, and I'm gonna talk about basically what happens when people lie, and me is included in there. So I'm going to title this video Truth is a super important virtue, probably. If not, it's going to be something quite similar to that. So, to start at the top of my script, I think the most essential thing in life is truth. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Basically, what I mean is if I had to pick a virtue out of all the virtues there are, and I could only single-mindedly pick love, truth, consciousness, hard work, just anything you can possibly imagine, material items, I would choose truth as being the most essential, meaning you need it the most. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end all be all. It does, however, mean, to at least to me, that if you are going to choose a truth single-mindedly, if you're going to choose a virtue single-mindedly, truth would be, I believe, objectively the most important, because it's the foundation to everything in life, and everything in life is based in truth. At least that is true. So I'm going to explain why I think that. And I do think that there are higher virtues that combine truth, love, wisdom, and a lot of other virtues like becoming your greatest version, like all these things. If you tie a lot of really, really high virtues together, then that's the ultimate virtue, right? Because truth is not enough to sustainably and profoundly change the world, to make it a better place. Okay. But it is a crucial element of it, and it is probably the most important element, which is why I always talk on my Facebook and YouTube and blog that truth is extremely important. So here's what I think about truth. It's like oxygen for people to know what is morally right and wrong, true and untrue, exciting and uninteresting, genius and stupid. And here's some more expansion on that. I think that truth helps you discern what your purpose is in life and what is not. It helps you tell what's true of the Bible and what's not. What I mean by Bible is the Christian Pentecostal Bible, because that's the one I'm most familiar with, and Christian Science Bible. Those are the two I'm most familiar with. However, like I said, truth is not everything. And it is hard for me to say this with full confidence that I actually think that truth is the most essential value, but I don't think I'm being delusional here or narcissistic in any way. I'm saying this with full confidence. I've really thought through what I'm thinking, and my intent of this video is not to make you feel bad, not to make you feel good. It's just to say what I truly think, because it is completely relevant to your life if you connect it to what you're struggling with or what you're succeeding in or anything. Truth is the most essential value. So I don't know how people can't talk about this. It literally makes me think that we're all going insane if we don't see this. And you don't have to take my word for it, right? I'm asking you to do your work to figure out that this is absolutely true. And if you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. In fact, I like it when people disagree with me. I actually think that it builds more character in the person who's disagreeing with me as well as myself. So I can handle, even if someone said, Shane, you're a narcissistic sociopath, or worse, you're a narcissistic psychopath. Even if somebody said that to me, in my personal Facebook friends, I would keep it up. Believe it or not, I didn't used to be like this. I would keep it up, and they could say whatever they want. They have a right to whatever opinion they want. Now, obviously, I'm not that type of person, and all my friends who know me well know that very perfectly well that I am not that person. So I'm also not trying to control anybody by saying any of this. So my point is simply to give you insight and hopefully convince you that this is absolutely true, and convince you in the sense that you think about it on your own and then you're convinced that this is true. Okay. And when I say, telling the truth about certain subjects is a matter of life and death. And I really mean here that if you can't see what I'm saying, I truly and fully believe that you have not lived by truth enough. And I said radical honesty on my blog. What I really meant to say was truth. To see the value in what I'm saying. Now, I'll give you a clear example of this. If you have cancer and someone is telling you you have cancer, if they tell you that you don't and you do, that's literally a matter of life or death, especially if it's in stage like 4 or 3 where you're about to die. So this is just a fact, okay? I'm not trying to push any agenda here. I'm just trying to say the truth about what can happen if we don't say what we think when we absolutely should. What else? Another example. If somebody is having a heart attack and an ambulance comes and then they say, oh, he doesn't need our help. He's not going to die, and he's going to die, obviously. That's a matter of life or death, right? You can't deny that. That's about as clear as it can get. I can give hundreds of examples of this, I'm sure, but I think we all understand what I'm trying to communicate to you. Okay, I think the first, and this is a topic. How do I know when I'm supposed to say what I think? Now, you might say, Shane, why is this so important to describe, right? What's the point of this? And my point is that if you want to be honest, if you want to live by truth, you got to know when you're supposed to say what you think and when you shouldn't. Because sometimes we say things that are false and we don't mean to, right? And sometimes we are arrogant about our beliefs. So when do you say what you think? And this is directly relevant to my whole topic of truth, because that's the whole point of truth. The whole point of us with the concept of truth is to bring about truth in our actions and through our words and through our nonverbal communication. That is probably the most essential duty that we all have to some degree in our lives. Okay? What degree? I would say you have a duty if you work for a medical industry, a counseling industry, working as a professional golfer or a golf professional or whatever, any industry, you have a duty to say the truth to the highest degree that you can, because you are corrupt if you do not, and I don't think you can be competent without saying the truth to people enough to help them. It's impossible because the ideas will, if they're false, people will figure it out, at least to some degree, eventually, and you will lose credibility. So whether you lie about your abilities in a sport, lie about a medical condition that somebody has to get for fraud, anything like that. People just don't understand how important it is to say the truth and to be honest. Both of those are extremely important, and I'm just so literally absolutely dumbstruck by how much people lie everywhere. My personal life, my professional life, everybody around me. And it's like they can't see what's really worth focusing on. And if you don't worry about what's really important, you will pay the consequences. Not because I make them come about or anything, but because you will have your reality tested in very subtle ways, and you will find out that what you believe is fundamentally false through experience. And if you can't see that it's fundamentally false, that's probably a worse thing. That means you're probably farther away from the truth than you think. It means the philosophy you live by does not facilitate a way to find truth, which means you need to change your philosophy for your best interest, not about me, for your best interest. This whole video is about other people, and for some reason people just think I'm talking about myself. This has nothing to do with me particularly, although it does to some degree, because I'm part of reality. I am an embodiment, to the best of my ability, the truth that I live, right? I don't think that was perfectly said, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So here's more of what I mean. I think the first way to know if the person I am talking to is going to listen to what I am saying, if it is truly in the person's best interest for me to say what I need to say, if I know deep down the idea is undoubtedly true, and if the person I'm speaking to is mature enough to consider what I am saying as being true. Now let's dig deeper in that, okay? Here's what I really mean by this. I mean that if you are a sane human and you really want to treat people with true love and respect, like Jesus did, like Socrates did, like Dostoevsky did, as far as I know, you want to say what you truly believe, even if you offend somebody, and even if you make somebody quote-unquote uncomfortable, which I don't even believe that's possible, because ideas make people uncomfortable, not necessarily people. I mean, unless you define it by a person literally, like, hurting you, like stabbing you or something. Okay. I mean, that's not what I would call offense, or it's not what I would say as, like, that's not the mindset I'm coming from. But point being is, you have to reflect on your beliefs to see if they're true, if you want your life to go in a way that is smooth and without having chaos overtake it. Okay? So, for instance, I've worked with people, not my job, because I'm not talking about that. I work with people in my personal life who have told me that they have essentially said what they thought when they should a lot of times in their life. In other words, they were being honest, and their life ended up going the way they thought it would go a lot of times. I mean, with a few things that unexpected. So you can guess me. You say, Shane, you're incredible, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're a disgrace to the mental health field. Say all those things. Honestly, I don't really care very much at all if you say those things, because I'm at the point where I see so many issues in society that if I don't say something, if I don't speak up, if I don't do exactly what this is a perfect example of me saying what I should say, and I just don't regret it at all. I think it's absolutely, how could anybody not say this stuff? Anyway, hopefully you see the value in what I'm saying, because the reason I'm speaking up is because so many people don't say what they think when they absolutely should. So, what do I mean by that? Let's go into more detail. Okay, if you're at work and a coworker is, let's say, they're lying outright to a customer. They're saying that the price of a shampoo product is $4 and it's actually $6 or $7. You should say something if they're trying to mislead them purposely. You should even say something if they accidentally give you the false thing. And you might say, okay, well, that's easy to tell, Shane. Let's go into something else that's more complex that I don't understand very well. Okay, let's say your brother is having issues, right? Like with depression, anxiety, maybe he's using cocaine or something. And, I think that's a bad idea. And so you're like, I said something, and that's all I can do. And, and then he's like, nope, I don't want to quit. I want to keep using this, and that's just it. So then you think to yourself, well, I did say what I thought, and nothing happened. My brother's still the same person. I keep telling him, don't do cocaine. It's not a good idea. I'm going to paraphrase Einstein here for deeper context. You can't solve a problem at the same level of thinking that you came at it. Okay? What do I mean like that? If you approach somebody that you are friends with or family or whatever, and you try to, just outright, just without any type of rapport or any type of good relationship, like you haven't spent a lot of time with them, you haven't done a lot of things with them, they're gonna reject your advice right away, typically, unless they're like a super trusting person who's used to you being honest, or used to people being honest around them constantly. But typically they're just going to reject it, right? And you might say, well, this is not worth saying what I think. Look, I've thought through this. You guys have no idea how much I think about this stuff. People read my Facebook posts, and it's like the tiny, tiny surface level. I think of this stuff all the time. And if you think that just slightly thinking, oh, well, I'm not gonna say what I think because it's not gonna do anything, or you say, oh, Shane, you said that it's good to speak up, and I've done it and I got fired. Well, I've got fired too. I've also lost friends. I've also seemed to lost family members, at least temporarily, from speaking up. So I understand there's another side, okay? And I understand you might think you're better than me because you're not living by my philosophy, and then you get confused maybe because you think that the philosophy I'm living by doesn't work. But Maybe. I'm not saying this is 100%. I'm simply saying that it's a possibility that somebody could stumble upon this video, so don't take this personally. I'm just addressing a lot of different arguments, and I've had a lot of people unfriend me because of this subject. Like 4 people, it seemed like, or something like that. And it's bugged me. So, here's where I'm getting with this. You gotta experiment. You gotta change the way you're doing things. Maybe you gotta understand their perspective more. Tell them that you understand what they're going through, and blah blah blah. Like, reiterate their perspective. This is what you're taught. This is what I'm taught in counseling. Is essentially you need to understand their perspective and make them feel like they're heard. Okay, that's important. But here's a better idea. How about you talk to everybody in the person's family, so all their intimate connections, and you influence the people who will listen to you, and you talk to them like I'm talking to you, thinking from their perspective, thinking very, very deep, very, very deep, and you cannot take this lightly. It has to be a life purpose. It has to be, you have to be hardcore. You can't just say, or maybe not hardcore. Hardcore is the wrong word. You have to be very, very dedicated to understanding how deep this problem goes. So, here's the story for you to understand kind of a little bit of depth. I had an aunt, and I still have an aunt, who married my brother. Excuse me, not my brother, my uncle. He was like my brother. My uncle, and some of you may know this person, whatever. I don't really care, but main purpose of me doing this is to show you that there's a purpose, that it's worth putting the time into. Here, you can see that my brother, or my uncle, is he is actually he has a lot of psychopathic traits and narcissistic traits. He's probably like a full-blown narcissist. And I know this. I know what narcissist is. I study this as in my schooling, and I'm pretty confident that he's. I know I'm not supposed to diagnose family members. I know it's not super professional, but hey, I don't agree with the counseling industry. You can be unbiased about family members. You just have to set aside your agenda. You have to be truthful. I think it's possible. Anyway, he is a narcissist, in my opinion, and he would lie to my brother every single day and every single hour, probably. And my aunt believed a lot of his lies, and eventually she figured it out. You know, he would use, like, methamphetamine. He would use alcohol, smoke cigarettes, it's just everything, basically. And I was trying to get her to leave the guy for like 20 years, it seemed like. We would all say, you know, this guy's not the right guy. He's treating you badly. He's abusing Eric. Abusing my brother. You know, he's abusing you. You know, all these things, right? So, nothing worked, right? It was like I was talking to a wall with my aunt. But I figured out later on that essentially what I had to do was do my research on people who had psychopathic tendencies, people who had drug addictions. I had to present some empirical evidence to her and think from her perspective and spend time with her on as much as I can, And so what I did is I spent a lot of time with my aunt, probably hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, maybe even, my whole life. So I was around her a lot. And she's also a very conscientious person, meaning she works very hard. So she had a business and everything. And she would listen to me because I was also being honest to her always. And not to mention that I spread this information to all the family members. So we all were in agreement that this guy was basically like at least had psychopathic traits. And it took years. Finally, I talked to her once on the research I did, and I mentioned how the Christian Science biblical writings were incorrect, the way she interpreted them, that all people were good and all people would change and all that. And so we had to get to the core of where she believed that all people were good and understand that this guy actually, he has malevolence in his soul, right? So I said something in a very, very methodical, planned out, deeply researched way. I even read peer-reviewed articles on how psychopaths are wired and how they're creative and all these different types of things. And he seemed to fit the criteria quite a bit. I also did my best to develop people skills so that people would trust my discernment better. So this is not an easy task. Like, I planned it out for years and years. My whole purpose in life was to essentially help people since I was like 19, in a therapeutic type of way, or mental health, as a mental health professional in some way. It wasn't easy, you can't just do one thing and expect the whole world to change. You gotta work extremely hard, and people think, well, it's just not worth it. I'm telling you that I don't believe that's true. And if you don't do something about your family issues or your own issues, if you don't want to put all the work in, like I have, you might say, well, Shane, this is hopeless. Yeah, it kind of is. You gotta really dig deep. You can't take this lightly. It's very hard to get people to listen to what you're saying. It takes you figuring out your issues to a certain degree for people to be able to trust what you're saying. So I would say study influence. I read this book called The Psychology of Influence. I think it was like a long time ago. And I took it very seriously. But also, you gotta have faith, because if you just think that you're gonna figure out all the problems in one day, or that speaking up is worthless after you try it once, you're not gonna get anywhere. You can't take that mentality. You have to be proactive and think about every word you say, every action you take, every impression you make, and you have to be very strategic on understanding why people aren't listening to you. When you talk, when you hear somebody talk, and when you hear yourself talk, ask yourself, does this person understand what I'm saying? 1. 2, does this person care about what I'm saying? Because if they don't, you got to find a way to argue why they should care about it. Because even then, it's hard to get them to pay attention to what you're saying, because if they don't agree with the argument that you make. But what I usually do is say, hey, I actually am thinking about you. So everything that I'm saying is coming from a place where I'm focusing on things outside of myself because I actually care about you. It's not about me. And I changed the way I see the world like that too. So it's very difficult, but I do think it's possible. And as you keep doing this method with people over and over and over, um, you can get people to listen to you and take your advice, and only because it's in their best interest. That's the only reason it works really permanently, is that it's actually true. What you're saying has to be true. You have to present it in a way that people will listen to you, and you would be surprised how much power you can have. I mean, it's not about power, but you'd be surprised how much influence you have on people if you just keep pursuing the truth and keep working on yourself, keep developing yourself. Even if you're an engineer watching this, right? Or let's say you're a medical doctor or somebody else. You can still do what I'm doing. Don't think that you have to be a counselor or a mental health professional to say what you think. Everybody can say what they think, and you can figure out your own way to get people to take you seriously. But first, you got to know what's true and what's false. That's where it starts. That's why I'm doing this video. And if you don't know what's true and what's false, people won't listen to you very much. If you deeply know what you're saying is true and it is true, people will listen to you. The power is in competence, which I define as skills. Like, a person can be competent riding a bike, right? Because they don't fall. They can go from their house to their work. That's competence. They say they're going to do it. They do it. Let's bring it up a notch. They say they're going to do it in 10 minutes, and they get to work on time every day. They leave at 7:45, and they get there at 7:55, and their work starts at 8. They made it. They park their bike. They lock they put a lock on it. Doesn't get stolen. That's competence. So that's another important component. The second component, what I mean is by truth, is facts that are from credible doctors, lawyers, psychologists, those types of people. And it's getting hard to find those people nowadays because they don't think this deep. And it's really sad that I think more deep than most doctors probably. That's the sad part, is they don't obsess over truth and try to live by truth as much as they humanly can, to the point where they would rather die than not live by truth overall in their life. So I'm at that point. Because I don't want to live a normal life. I've decided that a long time ago. I don't want mediocrity. I want greatness. Period. And I live my life in accordance to that goal. And so I wish that this was simpler, because I wish I could say to you right now that there is an easy way to fix your problems, to get people to not fire you for saying what you think. I'll tell you a story. I got fired from a place called Center for Social Dynamic. I was a behavioral specialist, and I thought people could see out of my eyes. And so I think I talk about this in my writings here because I'm writing and I'm also lecturing. But in some, I got fired because I thought that I was influencing clients to be violent because they could see through my eyes, and that wasn't true, right? So you might say, Shane, you should have just kept your mouth shut. You never should have said it. But actually, it led me to figure out what was true and what was false. So that's why I don't actually think that it was a bad idea. And I also not only think it wasn't a bad idea, it was a great idea. It was exactly what I needed to do. Because at that point in life, I literally didn't know what was true, and the only way I could have found out was to talk about it and to see if my realities match with reality. So that's why I'm saying it's extremely important to make sure your ideas match with what is true. That is the fundamentals to everything in life, I would say. And yeah, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong about that. So if you think I'm some arrogant asshole that's not thinking through this, it's completely untrue as far as I can tell. Okay. Now, I say in my blog, still the whole field is corrupt, meaning the mental health field, and no one credible and reasonable will make you say something you should not have to a client, coworker, or supervisor a big deal if you are living by a good philosophy. Now, I've talked about what good philosophy is in my past videos. Part of it is being honest, part of it is being your best version, part of it, and what I mean by that is obviously reflecting on your mistakes, your lies, your idiosyncrasies. Like, if you got trouble with memory, you need to improve that. You got trouble with learning, you need to figure out a way to learn, like how to cook, and you need, I don't know, something like that. Then you learn how to cook and you become good at it. So that's a good philosophy. A good philosophy is self-reflection and learning how to be a good person that people like, which is an honest person, typically a competent person, a person who has high integrity, a person, all these different things. So when I say I would ignore people when they think it is better not to say what you think when you absolutely should. What I mean by that is you should ignore people when they're saying to you that you shouldn't say what you think when you absolutely should. It doesn't mean you ignore the entire person. It means that you ignore what they're saying. Okay. So, full disclosure, I think I had schizophrenic disorder, but I need to express my fears to them to see if what I believed was, what I was trying to say here. So, when I was working as a behavioral specialist at Center for Social Dynamic, I think, like currently, I had schizophreniform disorder. But I, needed to express my fears to them, meaning my employers, to see if what I believed was true, and I don't regret it looking back. So, again, I don't think anyone can see out of my eyes anymore. And schizophreniform disorder is basically, for your own edification, it's basically the same as schizophrenia, except it lasts for 6 months and goes away for life. Okay. And now to transition, what happens when I don't say what I think? I think this is kind of relevant, and this, to me, it transitions. You might say, well, Shane, I still don't want to say what I think because I feel like life would be worse. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know if what I believe is true. I don't have the confidence as you. Don't idolize me too much because I am a flawed human. If you didn't already see that, but I do know what I'm talking about here. So what happens? You might want to say, well, what happens when I don't say what I think when I should? Well, first, I know many people who live lives avoiding saying what they think when they should. And I can tell you without a doubt that there are parts of their lives where they are unhappy. Not only are they unhappy, their lives aren't going the way they want them to go when they're lying too much. The scariest realization is when you disagree with what I'm saying and you think that not saying what you think when you should is not a reason people are miserable. That's what I'm concerned about. So you see no truth to what I'm saying. That means that you're completely gone. There's no way to help you. Or if there is, it's not going to happen right now, probably. Okay? So what I say here is if you lie a lot, or sometimes, by definition, you do not say what you think when you should, I want you to be humble and ask yourself if you could be wrong about where your problems are coming from. I guarantee your issues are partly caused by lying. The problem is deep, that you can't possibly imagine it. Probably. First, imagine how often people have avoided saying what they think to you when they should, and the outright lies that they believe that other people have told them and then told you. First, imagine if you could figure out every time someone has lied to you and altered your belief system according to what is true. To them is what I mean. So you altered your belief system according to what they considered to be true. That's scary because here's what I say, when you fill your soul with deceit, which is exactly what happens there, you lower your value in your skill and integrity. What do I mean by that? Okay, here's one example. Let's say, you get feedback at work as an engineer and you helped design a bridge really well, but nobody said the issues that you missed. So, 5 years go by, nobody said anything, the bridge seemed fine. All of a sudden, your bridge got a crack and part of it kind of fell. So the person was driving and they crashed. Well, all of a sudden, now, because the person didn't say what they thought when they should have, maybe because they were intimidated by you, or maybe because they didn't have the confidence to say that you missed, putting extra, I don't know. I don't know how engineers do this, but just imagine they have some type of extra pavement they put on the concrete that makes it more stable so it doesn't break. And not only do you become less intelligent because of that person not saying anything, but then you get into a spiral of doubting if other people didn't say what they thought to you when you were saying something foolish. And so not only does that make them less trustable to you, it makes you less trustable to other people as well. And if you think that this problem is, not any more deeper than this, that's completely false. It goes way deeper than this, because it's not only that you do not get as much credibility, it's that when you tell people stories later in life, you can't go in as much detail to get the credibility that other people could have if they didn't make those mistakes. So vulnerability is essentially a way that people build trust. They disclose things about themselves to be trusted by society. And generally speaking, people will not trust you if you are not vulnerable to them. So it will haunt you for the rest of your life. That's what I'm saying, basically, when you talk about this subject. And you won't want to go in too much detail because it might make you look bad, but actually making yourself look bad builds trust and rapport, and it shows that you're human. And that's why I'm saying you want to just hit the core of the problem at that moment when the issue emerged. And where just the coworker, or the supervisor just says something and it just gets over with, So that's ideal, right? But if you got too many skeletons in your closet, it's pretty damn hard to build good relationships with people, because people are not just based on, people don't trust people not just solely based on if they're being honest. They also trust them based on other people's reviews of that person, maybe work or personal or professional. Excuse me, that's work. Personal, and then also like people think through this stuff sometimes, and they won't trust somebody if they don't give them the sides of if somebody doesn't disclose the sides of their work history that aren't perfect, right? And then, if you think about the person who crashed their car, they're probably going to have trust problems with bridges in general. So they got to go through all this trauma. Maybe they got to go to therapy because they got in a car accident because somebody made a mistake on the bridge. And if you don't feel safe driving, that's gonna cause some issues in your driving, and it could affect relationships. If you got to drive to somebody's house to see a friend, you're not going to want to drive over a bridge, right? Because that thing happened to you. So these things happen, right? I mean, this is kind of a strange scenario, and it's probably not the perfect scenario. But here's another one. This is something I wrote. So this is kind of scripted. So here's another one. For instance, imagine your mom telling you you are generally bad at socializing. And most people think you are good at socializing. Because your mother told you a lie and has built strong rapport with you, you may believe the lie your mom told you. Because how many outright lies have been told? Excuse me. I did not read that best. Excuse me. I meant to say, because your mom told you a lie and has built strong rapport with you, you may believe the lie your mom told you because she is your mom. Okay. And I think all people tell outright lies at least once in their lives. And I could be wrong about that. I hope I am. The question is, how many outright lies have you been told and believed? So that's, I think an outright lie is telling a falsehood. Or it could, I guess you could argue that it could be just an omission of crucial information that you have to know to be competent at your job, or, you have to I don't know, you have to say to build rapport with somebody or something. So if you don't know how many lies you've been told, I would reduce your belief system to things you know for absolute confidence are true, and make sure to be extra careful what to believe. Okay? What I mean by that is if you're in a state of where you're just like, Shane, after I watch this video, I don't know what to believe. I don't know what's true anymore. I don't know if my mom, what she told me about me is true. I don't know if I don't know if my friends, because they tell me different things, they give me different feedback, and nobody agrees with each other. If you're in that place, I sympathize with you, and I empathize. That is extremely difficult, and I am very sorry that you're going through that. That is extremely profoundly traumatizing to people to go through that. At least some people. So you just need to have faith that the truth will set you free. You will figure out who you are eventually. Just keep taking action. Keep doing what works, and you'll figure out who you are, who's right about you, about their perception of you, because there are right perceptions and there are wrong perceptions. I hate it when people say, well, it's just a matter of an opinion. Here's what I think about this when people say that. They say that, and really what they mean is, I don't want to disagree with somebody and offend them because I don't agree with their perception. I don't think their perception is correct. A lot of people just lie and say that to make themselves feel better, to make the other person feel better. But that actually damages the relationship worse, because you know perfectly well when you talk to somebody, just do this visualization, you have an intent when you talk to somebody, if you bring awareness to it. Like when you go talk to your spouse or you talk to your friend, maybe you're thinking to yourself, I want to talk to my friend about an experience I had because I'm excited about it and I want to share it with them. If that's why you're sharing that with them and they don't interpret that that's your true intent, their perception is wrong. Because, well, it's not necessarily wrong because it sounds mean. It's just not what's truly going on. It's not your true intent. There is a truth. You have a true intent to all your actions, generally, I would say, and all your interactions with people. The intentions are there. And it's important to be aware of those so that people are aware of how you're communicating. So, I go on to say, here's what this is a very long video, so I'm trying to keep this digestible, but it's impossible for me to do that without actually giving you real value here. So I have found that people lack awareness of the staggering depth of all the types of lying people do to people. You might even be a person who has trained your network to lie to you and evaluate that as a virtue. This leads you to deep confusion, lack of passion, trust in people, and maybe even resentment for reality not matching your view. So for instance, imagine a coworker does not say what he thinks when he should to a supervisor, thus leading the coworker to develop resentment and fear toward their supervisor. So I think I already talked about this. So I'm going to but I did not talk about feelings. So I want to emphasize, feelings are important. But often, feelings lead to falsehoods. And that is when we need, I emphasize need, to take ownership of how our feelings are misleading and align our feelings with what is true. It is terrible to trust our feelings when they lead us to falsehoods. It is still possible to validate a person's feelings as important and meaningful, but also acknowledge that they are leading a person to falsehoods. I hope that's clear. Anytime I tell a falsehood, I am painfully aware that it's false, usually. And it's by accident, usually, almost always, when I do tell one. And I correct it and I tell people, hey, this isn't true. I didn't mean to say blah, 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 blah. Typically. And that's all you can do, right? Your feelings matter. But I'm telling you, you lead a life where your feelings are dominant, you're just going to be crushed by reality. Reality's going to hurt your ego. And I'm sorry, but it's going to create trauma probably for you, and you just don't want to go that route. So remember that when you don't say what you think when you should, you're not only lying, Remember that when you don't say what you think when you should, you are not only lying, but also influencing others to lie to you, especially when you take offense to what they say and ignore what they say. So imagine a person who can't accept feedback from his managers because he expresses how important it is to preserve his feelings, even at the cost of his ability to perform well at a manufacturing job. Imagine the person also plays tennis and won't accept feedback from anyone who plays tennis, thus resulting in him being unable to improve his game substantially. Do you think this person will be an expert tennis player or manager? My answer is probably not. Very, very unlikely. Even if they do become an expert, they probably won't become an expert very long, because nobody becomes an expert forever if they're never accepting feedback from people. Some people can do almost everything on their own. They don't really need much feedback, but even those people need feedback, and they could go down easily without feedback, meaning they could get fired or they could be incompetent in some way. So also, because this person is not as good as he could be at being a tennis player or manager, he will lose the trust of his coworkers, supervisors, and friends who know him as a manager and tennis player who believes in honest communication and strive to be the best versions they can. Now imagine a person who has high integrity and lives by truths, like saying he is going to play tennis and then playing tennis every time. He could also say that he loves to be a manager at a manufacturing company and then live his words in life. When he plays tennis, he has friends who are tennis experts, give him feedback about his abilities and offer suggestions on how he can improve. Further, imagine the person also has expert manager friends at a manufacturing company who give him feedback on improvement, thus leading to his master skill set as an expert manufacturing manager. People with high integrity will easily get work references, friends, and even romantic partners because people will trust them. Second, I want you to ask yourself, if you were honest with everyone and said what you thought to everyone when you know you should all the time, how would that change your life? Right? So what I mean by that is, how deep can that change your life? Because your whole worldview may change completely. And you may find that the people you thought were your friends are completely not your friends. And the people who are your true friends, those people aren't your friends. So it is very hard, because I realize I'm asking people to really get into an uncomfortable place of mind and it can be traumatizing, but I'm telling you that I'm going to continue releasing videos. Maybe not as much as I need to, but I'm going to try and do more videos on this stuff or blog about it. So I'm trying my best to help people the best I can, okay? So how, you might say, um, how could lying possibly affect everything I believe, right? Well, first, let's say you believe that money is most important in a marriage. Well, how did you build that value system, right? I mean, was it based on somebody telling you, like your mom saying that money matters? And if it was coming from your mom, where did she get that information? And how did she interpret it? How did she apply it? What happened to her life from her applying it? Ask yourself these questions to figure out, should I believe this? Should I value this? You know, people just listen to their family members and they don't really question it sometimes, or most times probably. And you got to ask yourself, how is it affecting your life? Truly. I mean, I know people who get married because of money, and they usually get divorced. I have a friend who had a girlfriend who, I'm pretty sure she just wanted to be in a relationship with him, which wasn't a marriage, but it was close to a marriage, because he had money and because he looked good. And she did not share the same values as him at all. I mean, in certain ways at all. And that led him to building strong resentment because he couldn't be honest to her without her reprimanding him for saying what he thought. So she was actually living a lot of a lie, I would say. And by me knowing this person and trusting this person, I know that, you know, he was mistreated. So, and the reason I have this confidence is because all my friends who are decent to good friends value honesty, and they value truth, and they value working on their biases and bettering themselves. So if you think I'm not credible because I live by these values, I think you're insane. Literally. But, I mean, it's a high likelihood you're insane. I don't know how you could believe that and not be insane. I can't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a way to see it. But I'm saying what I think here with awareness that it could be wrong, but I don't think it's wrong. Okay. Now I'm going to continue to the script again. Do you think now, imagine a person who has high integrity and lives by truth. By saying he is going to play tennis. Oh, I already read that. I'm sorry. So we talked about how this was going to change your life. So it could very, very deeply change your life. This whole video could completely change your life if you apply what I'm saying. And it's really deep stuff, so you can watch this over and over if you need, and I'm going to do my best to publish this. So now imagine you believe in lying by avoiding saying what you need to say, and you attract the same people like you. Then imagine a person who is generally sincere and has high integrity. When that person is in your life, you may not even see his value because you have lied too much. If you have lied too much, you will likely see him as fake and untrustworthy, and even consider his virtuous habits stupid or immature. The sad part is that at this point, you may not even be able to rescue yourself from your delusion, because once you lie too much, it is almost impossible to recover. For instance, I had I already talked about my uncle, excuse me, but I can go into a little more detail. For instance, I had an uncle whose life fell completely apart because of his low honesty and bad integrity. He went to a jail for harassment towards my aunt and had a methamphetamine addiction. My aunt divorced him, and this is the same person that I told you about who I like figuring out how to say what you think, and it actually mattering, actually have an influence, So once a person has lied too much, it can be impossible for them to understand a person's miraculous success. I see people who lie too much will often think it is because of good luck, good genes, corruption, or even hard work. I believe hard work, good genes, and luck help, but it is much more to do with a person's long-term desire to achieve success and health, and well-being than any of those things. Okay, they don't believe being truthful can completely transform a person's life. Please don't take my word and experience on faith, but I am doing my best to be truthful. It is easy to see a person's life fall apart when they are a chronic liar, but what is harder is when a person lies occasionally and they end up unable to see what values are best for them and everyone around them, and they will advise other people to live by those values. For instance, the lie that it is a good idea for a woman to marry a man for their money. You can argue that this is wise decision because you need money to pay for your children's schooling, daycare, or other possible requirements. It is much wiser to marry a person based on their competence in life philosophy, job skills, work ethic, character, values, and more. Why? Fundamentally, I think it is a good idea to marry someone based on values they live and speak, not money. Value is what fundamentally makes a person able to make big money. Also, you could argue that I am a man and I'm only saying this because I am not rich and famous yet in America, and I want to be chosen by women more. Therefore, my opinion is biased. I'm afraid I have to disagree with you on that if you make that claim. First, if I were a woman, I would marry a man based, let's say I was a heterosexual woman, I would marry a man based primarily on their values. Values can last forever. Almost everything else can and will change. Second, just because I am a man, that does not mean that I am subject to being biased in this aspect of life. I do believe that men need to become their most excellent versions to ultimately have a remarkable relationship with a woman if they are heterosexual. Okay. Now, how does this connect to the next part of this blog? The law of attraction. Well, attraction works. Attraction is very related to the way you choose to marry someone, right? Because you attract people with similar values. And that's why I'm saying there are values that are the most beneficial to humanity, and then there are values that are not, that are more based on a little tribe of people that help only a tribe. And I want to live by the values that help humanity as a whole, not just my tribe. So I would call that a healthy, probably an elevated level of values above other values that are tribal and more selfish. And that is where I get into the law of attraction, because you attract people who are like you. So there is a concept called the law of attraction, which can mean you attract people like you. First, I know from experience that this is true for many people. People are also attracted to people they want to be like. You will have a higher chance of attracting people with low integrity if you have low integrity. I think being more likely to attract people with low integrity is a punishment for lying. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying, the consequences of not saying what you think. You're going to attract a bad crowd of people who you can't really trust very well. So I also think that when people are unable to value someone's character for being good is also a punishment for lying. For instance, I have tried to befriend certain people with values that are strongly different from mine. I found that they often think I was acting out of my lower selfish interest, thus making me unable to explain my intentions in our interactions. What I have learned is that people are unable to see who I truly am without living in truth enough in their lives. Okay. So, for your information, we're going to kind of go into a background of my family, and you might say, how is this related to the whole subject of truth is a super important virtue, right? Okay, the truth about my childhood, right? That's what we're going to go into, because we're going to try to understand, where my biases could be. And hopefully you'll trust me more if I show that I'm more aware of my biases than you might think. So, from some background, I come. So here's my background. I come from a working class background. My dad was and is a man of high integrity and has literally, to my memory, always been honest in almost every way to me. He also was and is a very smart man. My mom has and been frank with me basically in every way possible to my knowledge. I am aware that I am very fortunate. I also am aware that my adversity in school and learning has built my character, has made me humble, for instance, open to learning, very grateful for my success and my family and my partner and all these things. So if anyone is going to make history in my town, this is just what I believe, as a psychologist, it is going to be me because of my work habits, thinking, optimism, character strength, maturity, and more. That's why you should listen to me, because I'm not playing games here. I'm very serious about this work. I don't know what else to do to show you that I am, except keep doing these videos and keep living by my philosophy the best I can. So we are in a time in history where anyone who truly wants to become a genius probably can. So because of, Neuralink, artificial intelligence, and advanced computers. Now what are those? Neuralink, people have issues with Neuralink because you're putting a chip in your head and it seems very unnatural, and I understand where people come from that place. But you got to also understand that I'm not just saying Neuralink could be a very, very beneficial product for people because I'm desperate or because I think that capitalism is the only philosophy people should live by. Or maybe you think that I think that people should only be truthful and even if they don't know the truth, or somehow I put this expectation that somehow people think that I'm not aware of their feelings, or I'm not aware of how hard this is, and I'm privileged and all these things. People think all these things. Look, I've lived a very difficult life, but I can't attest to how hard your life is. All I can do is I can show you my background and try to help you, guide you to truth. That is the best I can do. And I'm telling you with 100% confidence, almost like 95, that Neuralink, artificial intelligence, and other advanced computers, with the right regulations and safety precautions, will and are transforming everything, basically. The medical industry, the counseling industry, the neurological, the neuroscience industry. Like, they're going to, and they are in some ways, transforming everything. And so I'm asking you to be a little more open-minded and consider that I'm not just a guy here trying to tell you what to do in your life or telling you what is true and what's absolutely not true all the time. I am simply saying what I think is true. It doesn't mean that it's gospel. It doesn't mean that it absolutely 100% is true, although sometimes I believe it is. But the point of me, I'm not... This is me trying to give you resources that I've found that help me, except for Neuralink. I have not got a Neuralink because Neuralink has not become advanced enough. Also, I do research into the people who develop this stuff, and I know that the people who are developing this stuff are credible people a lot of times, in a lot of ways. And there's indisputable evidence that they do have credibility. So Elon Musk, for instance, has credibility. You just need to look into his history. Yeah, there's people who say that he's lying and that he's evil, but look at the results that he's delivering and look at how people are giving those reviews when they buy them. That's what you need to look at the most, the actions that he takes. And maybe you could say, well, Shane, he's not necessarily like... I don't believe he manages all those companies. I don't believe he's just co-founder of Neuralink, co-founder of Tesla and Boring Company, like all these things. It's just too good to be true. Okay, you can have your opinion, okay, and maybe you're just hating on Elon Musk. I don't know if you have that opinion. I don't know. The point I'm trying to make is there is indisputable evidence that he seems to create all these products to some degree. He has a lot of partake in it. Like, it's a team that creates all these products, right? Fundamentally, but he is the icon, right? So people could argue, well, he's stealing people's work. I don't think that's true completely at all. Maybe he's taking a little more credit than he deserves. But hey, he's delivering results. That's what I think. And that's the main thing to pay attention to. The impact it has on people overall. And it's pretty damn good overall. You might say, Shane, artificial intelligence. No, Shane, it's not doing good in the world. It's people are creating, artificial girlfriends, or people are creating artificial OnlyFans girls. This is not good for the world, Shane. What are you talking about? Or people are taking shortcuts. Life's too easy. They're not going to mature. And it's like blah, 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 blah. All those things. I hear what people are saying to those arguments. However, because I am more in an abundance mindset, and I believe that the truth wins ultimately in the grand scheme of things. That is my worldview. And by the way, it's working out pretty damn good for me. So maybe you shouldn't ignore me. It seems like, and it's happening, that if we are doing this very carefully, developing Neuralink, artificial intelligence, with safety precautions, it can and will be an overall good thing in moderation. So you can moderate this stuff in your life. You don't have to make it a crutch. It's not about the majority of people, what they do. We don't need the majority of people to be good. There doesn't need to be, not everybody needs to be a super good person to make the world a better place. The world doesn't change with, people who are just not interested in changing the world. The world changes with people who want to change the world and make it better for everyone. That if there's an intent and there's a clear plan and there's a determination behind that plan, desire, in other words, that is how the world changes. So just hear me out. It's, maybe your worldview is corrupted by falsehood because you don't have people say what they think to you too often. They're not checks and balances for you. I tell you, I talk to people who aren't super cynical because I find that cynicism is not only false a lot of times. I definitively believe if you're cynical about all people, I believe that's fundamentally false. And if you believe that, you're screwing your chances of ever having any hope in your life, because people are going to be part of your life whether you like it or not. And if you believe they're all, you shouldn't trust anyone, that's your problem as far as I can tell, because there are people who you can trust to a large extent. Now, I'm not saying trust everybody and everyone, but this is a you problem if you're automatically going to say, what you're saying sounds absolutely insane, Shane. We don't need Neuralink. We don't need artificial intelligence. It sounds too crazy. Technology's ruining the world. Blah, blah, blah. Apocalypse. We're all going to die. Yeah. Just see how that philosophies work throughout history. We've never gone extinct for the past 7,000 years. And there's been very catastrophic things that have happened. People are very resilient. That's just not our history. And if people live by these values, I guarantee you the chances of it happening are very low. If enough people live by these values. So that's hope, okay? There's hope. I'm just saying that. So I realize most people don't have a semi-functional family like mine, but please stay with me through the journey of finding truths together. I think most people have dysfunctional families where lying is normalized and sometimes encouraged. It can only help people who are living in truth enough. I did not choose to make the laws of the universe. It is just true that people who decide to try to bend reality to their agenda will be insane. And they are doomed to have the consequences of deep confusion. Okay, also, please remember that I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, so I could not really get away with lies much from a social status standpoint. Also, I rarely lied throughout my youth years from 5 to 18, and I rarely lie, period. I mean, I don't even lie now consciously, and I hardly lie unconsciously. If I do, I take ownership as much as I can, and I do my best with what I have. When I did lie, I knew it was wrong, and then I would stop myself from doing it as much as possible, even when I was 14 through 18. I usually tell all people that I lied to, I did, unless it was a tiny insignificant lie, but even those I think about admitting to the people I told them to. I'm used to people knowing me and trusting me because I was genuinely likable, well respected by people in the town I grew up in, and I'm sorry if you did not have my experience. Meaning, I'm sorry for you. I didn't cause you to have a bad life. I'm sorry that you had a bad life. And I'm doing my best to support people the best I can with this video and my blog posts and everything. Now, after all this video, do you think you could have different values? if you had lived by truth enough, like me. Because I'm going to be really blunt. I have been radically honest ever since I've been very young, generally. I mean, maybe I lied once in a while, once in a blue moon. I did lie once in a blue moon, very, very rarely. But I have recovered from that and I have learned from my mistakes. So almost no one is honest so frequently that they are in a completely different world than most. I have found from firsthand experience that being honest to an extreme degree in my life, and I am acknowledging I am perfect at always being honest. I am imperfect at always being honest, both consciously and unconsciously. And even saying what I think when I know I should has led me to see value in specific content creators. So I don't lie consciously anymore. I stopped lying consciously to the best of my ability when I was 23. But even when I was younger than that, I hardly ever lied. I mean, yeah, I think I was honest almost always in general in my life. And you know, there were times when I was like 23, I told a lie to a professor, but I told him that I looked up answers on Google, you know, and he said not to on the syllabus, and I told him I did anyway, and then he gave me full credit anyway because the test was literally impossible to pass without looking up answers, and everybody had the same issue. So if you admit to stupid things like that, you might think, oh no, like people, you know, need to just move on. I hear a lot. Sorry, I got a little upset there. I don't think it's worth moving on to things that could permanently damage your life. And do permanently damage your life, by the way. This is one of the things, and that's why I don't move on from them, because it's common sense, because your reality is based on truth. And when you put out truth, you're more likely to get it. When you put out falsehood, you're more likely to get it as well. This is just a law of human nature. I did not create these laws. I am not the person that is dictating how the laws go, even though maybe it might seem like it to some people. Probably not, but who knows. But that's how they are. So I'm going to continue. Without people offending me by giving me truthful feedback about my life habits and worldviews, I would have never seen the value in their YouTube channels. Jordan B. Peterson, Alexander Grace, and I meant to say actualize.org and more. I'm not saying I agree with all of these guys on everything, but they have some value to make, and I tend to value Jordan B. Peterson way more than any other YouTuber I've ever followed. But that's just my personal opinion. I have particular career aspirations that align with Jordan B. Peterson, so that is my personal opinion, but I think it's completely true about Jordan Peterson. He's very credible, he's very worth watching, and he has changed the world in substantial ways. He is not perfect, but he is a great resource. First, if you lie and think that the ideas I am arguing are false, at least partly, I want to invite you to a different perspective. Let's say you do something you regret, and it hurts your self-esteem. So you have gone against your moral integrity. In a certain sense, you have acted out a lie who you are as a character. Let's say you cheat on your wife. Imagine for a second that you realize you can't even trust yourself, which will result in other people losing trust in you in certain circumstances. As Aristotle mentioned, and I don't think this is a quote, this is paraphrased, we are creatures of habit. I think he said something like that. I previously said it was a quote. I realized that I'm doing my best with what I have. I couldn't find the exact quote on the internet, so I'm just going to say it's probably a paraphrase. We almost never do something only once. So when people refrain from saying what they think, even when they absolutely should, it can and will lead them into a desert of confusion. They will say things like everyone has opinions and no one opinion is correct. Everyone has their truth. Again, when people say these things, it is not like they think for themselves all the time. It is typically that they are saying these things to be liked. It is not true that everyone's opinion is correct. Not everyone has different views on average. Some people have more opinions in common than others. Also, some people's views are at least partly right about a particular subject almost always. I think it is possible, but very difficult. So this is the end of the video, and I hope you very much enjoyed this video. I will create more content in the future. I do realize that this video was pretty long, and I hope that it kept your attention. And please comment in the description, well, comment in the comments below, and I will respond to as many comments as I can. I mean, I'm assuming that there's not going to be very many, so I'll probably respond to everyone. But it's very important to me that you respond and just take this as food for thought, be critical of it, but I'm putting my heart out there, really. I'm really trying to help people, and I think people will see that. But for those of you that can't see that, I'm very sorry that you can't see that, because it is so true for me that it's probably unbelievable to a lot of people. But, well, it is what it is, so they'll figure it out the hard way or the easy way, whatever they want. You have a good day, and check out more videos as I complete them in the future.